Hello there, my friends. I'm Pittsburgh Pat. So, yesterday I had the privilege and the honor and the thrill of teaching new players how to play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So, I just want to make this video to recount that experience, and perhaps it will help someone else who's teaching new players how to play. And if you're a new player, maybe you'll learn something from this. If you're a DM with some experience, maybe you can steal some of my ideas and maybe in the comments give me some ideas. And of course, in order to help the algorithm, I'm obligated to say, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Very well, with all that out of the way. Yeah, so this was a karmic circle for me. About 9 years ago, when DnD 5e came out, 2014. I remember it was in the fall. Some friends and I got together and we decided we wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. And one of the players said, hey, you know what? I really want to play D&D. How about we play 3.5? And I had heard about 3.5 and I heard it was pretty crunchy. And I thought, well, we're beginner players. There's this new system that just came out. Why don't we give it a shot? See if we like it. We can always go back to 3.5 if we want. And so we thought, okay, we'll try this. But we didn't know how to play. It was brand new. So we called a game store near us. And I'll just plug it. It's called Game Masters. And it was in a different location than it is now. But that's how long ago it was. But the store is still in existence. And the owner, Phil, if you know Phil, he's an incredible guy. And he's actually blind. And he runs the store. And it's awesome. Everything's kind of on the honor system because, the man physically can't see. And he's a really great guy. He's this wonderful, infectious laugh. He's always laughing. And just got this really wonderful wit about him. So anyway, we didn't know that at the time. We called the game store and we said, hey, we'd like to have somebody show us how to play. So he asked someone to be a DM and show us the rules. So that was 9.5 years ago. And then I'm in his gaming store playing chess with a friend of mine that I play against every week and lose often because he's really good at chess and he's got like 70 years experience or something like that. Anyway, but I'm learning. And he came up to me, the phone rang, and he came up to me and he said, hey, I have 5 35 to 40-year-olds who have never played D&D before, and they'd like to learn how to play. Would you be willing to teach them? And I said, yeah. I mean, you want to talk about the universe giving you an opportunity to give back? So I was like, absolutely. So that's the setup. That's the whole story of like the karmic part. But here's the details I really like. So anyway, we get in there. It's a nice sunny day. He puts us right by the window at the front of the store. I set up for 5 players. There's 6 chairs at the table. It's a big round table. It's awesome. I'm going to be able to look everybody in the eye. I got my DM screen up there. I put out pre-generated characters, which I use and I highly recommend, and they're not endorsing me. Although if you want to endorse me, that would be fantastic. It's called fastcharacter.com, and it's an in-browser character generator. You don't have to download an app. You can just go in any web browser and generate a character, and it's awesome. And I used it to generate characters for some of the classes that I teach, and I used it for this one as well. And I made all 3rd level characters because I wanted them to have some interesting stuff, and I wanted them to have some hit points in case they got hit. So I put out their character sheets. I also put out a sheet of what you can do on your turn. Now, Fast Character has it on the back of their character sheets. It has suggestions. But there's another sheet that I found online. And I don't know if it's official D&D PDF or not, but I'm sure you can just find it. Like, what can I do on my turn? And it has a whole list, and it's really great. So anyway, I put those out. I put out dice. I put out a little figurine. I have these metal figurines, and in fact, I'll probably have that in the description box below. And I should mention I'm an Amazon affiliate, so anything that's in that description box, if you click on it, I'll probably make a couple dollars or maybe a couple cents or whatever. But that's cool. I appreciate you click through and take a look. And then I have a influencer page too with all my D&D stuff on it. But anyway, I put those out, and I put out a board that also I'll put the link in. And these materials are really not expensive. The figurines were like less than $10, and the boards were less than $30. Really nice stuff. And had drawn out maps, and I decided I was going to run Greenest in Flames, because that's the very first scenario in the very first book, like module adventure book that was published for D&D 5e. It was called Horde of the Dragon Queen, or I like to call it Hot DQ, like like a hot fudge sundae at Dairy Queen, Hot DQ. Now it's been consolidated into another book. It's called, I want to call it like Tyranny of Dragons or something like that. But I have the original book, actually. I should have brought it as a prop. Anyway, so that's what I decided I was going to run. So anyway, these guys show up. The 5 show up. And they're awesome. They're 35 to 40 years old. In fact, the one dude's birthday, I'll use their first names. I don't know their last names. I don't think they would mind. Chad, it was Chad's birthday. He was going to be 39. His wife Carla bought him this experience. She was there as well. And then there was another couple, married couple, named Jared and Margie. And then there was their friend Jeff, and that was the 5, right? So we were all around the table, and I had them introduce themselves and tell me something about themselves, where they were from, what they did for a living, and all that sort of thing. And they were all kind of in a healthcare-related facility in an administrative way, somewhat, and one was like kind of finance, which comes up later. He was really interested in the economic system of D&D. In fact, so I showed him the adventurers' equipment, and I gave him an idea of like what's worth 100 gold pieces, what's worth 10 gold pieces, and he could figure it out from there. So he was interested in that aspect, and I thought that was cool. But what I did was I went around the table, and I had them all write down. This is what I do. I have them write down on an index card. And I do this at all my Adventure League things too. And it's a memory aid for me, but I find it's useful at the table as well. Take an index card, fold it long ways, and then write and put it so it's a tent sitting on the table, and as if you had a nameplate on your desk, and you write your real name, or what you want everyone at the table to call you as an individual. And then you write your character's name, or what you want each other's characters to call your character, right? So they did that, and that was really useful, because the first thing I explained to them was there's 2 levels to our conversations. The first level is meta, and meta is me, Patrick, Pittsburgh Pat, talking to you, Carla, Jared, Margie, whomever it was at the table, as a real live human being. And then there's in-game. And in-game is, okay, I'm the NPC, like Governor Nighthill, and I'm saying, I need you to go out and capture some prisoners so that we can interrogate them and find out why they are looting and burning my town, right? And so that is, in-game. And then, like Jared's character, whom he renamed Madonna, even though it was a boy. So Madonna would say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to put out the fires. Where are the buckets? Where's the water? Where can I get that? So, so I explained that first. So I think that's useful to be able to explain. And then since the name tags were there, they could address each other by name, either as the individual, the real person, or the character, and then we could distinguish between the two. And I told them they could role play, they could use voices if they wanted to. So what was really cool was they kind of got into that. A couple of people were kind of like, it took them a while to get into that, and they just said like, okay, my character is named Otts, like Carla's character was named Otts Meeks. And so she said, Otts is from this, and Otts thinks that his father is, in the town, or his brother's in the town, or something like that. And then after a while, she's like this kind of like slender, petite woman, and with like, a normal voice. But when she was Otts Meeks, he was a stout dwarf, I believe. And so she talked like this, when she was Otts. And I was like, this is great, getting into the character and using expressions, voices, even like changing mannerisms. And I thought these guys are naturals. Like they're just going to have so much fun with it. And each one of them did eventually do that sort of thing. And they had in-game conversations with each other, like in character. And it was like an acting class. It was fantastic. And I explained to them at the beginning, I said, this is not a board game. I said, some people play it like a board game. So they have little squares and little people, and they move them around, and they roll dice, and they do the addition, and they see what hits and what. I said, but for me, because of my background, I like to accentuate the interactive story part of it, right? It's a collective story that we're all telling each other, and we all have a part to play in it. And actually, the DM, the Dungeon Master or Game Master, you'll hear both, DM, GM, is a player at the table. And it was in one of my podcasts where I interviewed a gentleman from Italy who writes modules for D&D, Marco Fossetti. And Marco said to me that in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it actually says the Dungeon Master is a player at the table. It's just he is also the adjudicator of rules, and he plays all of the non-PC characters. So he plays all the NPCs. And I thought that's a really interesting way to look at this, right? So it's not us versus them. It's not the Dungeon Master versus the player characters, although I've seen sessions go that way. It's we're all together, and we're all telling a story. And we all get to be part of that. And I think that's important. I skipped over the beginning. I told them why I was qualified, or why I thought I was qualified to teach them. And I think at this point it's important for maybe the audience, whoever's watching this video, to know what I told them. And I told them, one of my majors in college, I graduated with a degree in, was creative writing. I have written a novel. I've written short stories. They're published. They're out there. So I enjoy that process, right? I enjoy the story. And the rules of D&D are there. And there are going to be people who write in the comments and get upset about this. There are rules to D&D that are kind of like widely accepted amongst, the D&D community. But as the Dungeon Master, you are the final arbiter of the rules. So if there's a rule that gets in the way of the good story, maybe you bend that rule. Maybe that rule doesn't happen. Maybe that die roll is different. You interpret the die rolls, right? So that's what I was trying to explain to them, because I wanted them to leave the table with at least a few of them wanting to be DM and knowing how to do it in case they ever wanted to play at home amongst themselves. I also explained that in Adventure League, there's no player killing, so you don't attack another player. You can try to persuade them, and you don't rob them, you don't pickpocket them. We don't allow that in Adventure League. But certainly, if you're playing at your own homebrew, home game, you're welcome to do anything you please. So, so they I think, they understood that. And so that was the first thing I did, was kind of explain the different levels of play. And then I brought them into town. So what I did was I described the scene. I said, it's like Western Pennsylvania. It's rolling hills. You're on a cart. You're following a cart. You're in a part of a caravan, a trade caravan. You're coming to this town called Greenest. And of course, Jared was one. He said, is there a reddest or a bluest? And I said, yeah, there's a Oroy G Bib. There's every single one of the colors. But anyway, I thought that was really amazing that he picked up on that. So they come over the crest of the hill, and I said, the sun is setting behind you in the west, and you're coming, and the gloaming is starting, right? It's just that period where right when the sun's setting, it's just about to dip below the horizon. It's getting like, how shall I say, dusk. It's gloaming, and it's the in-between time. And so you come up over the horizon, you expect to see the village of Greenest, and you do, but you see it's in flames. There are at least 3 buildings on the far east side, southeast side, that are there's smoke rising, and you can actually see the flames. And so I said, what do you do? And so each one of them, in turn, talked about their characters and why they wanted to get to those burning buildings. One said that their lover, like the guy who was playing Madonna, said their lover was in one of those buildings, or he thought that she might be. And so he was very anxious about that. The second one said something like her estranged father was in there. She had a rocky relationship. That was Otts Meeks playing a man, actually. It was Carla playing a man. And then the birthday boy, Chad, his character was like a wizard. Although at first he didn't know that, and he used like a melee weapon to attack, and that's totally fine. But he said, that like his what was it? His I'm sorry. Otts Meeks was coming for revenge, and then Chad said that his father was a Dark Lord, and so Otts Meeks immediately picked up on that and said, "Oh, well, I think it's your father that I'm here to kill." And Chad's character said, "Well, that I'm conflicted about that. Like I don't have a great relationship with him, but I don't know that I want you to kill him." And I said, "Oh, this is like Rogue One." Right? That dynamic, right? Where Cassian and Jin, or Jin's father, and Cassian's supposed to kill the father. Anyway, I hope I didn't ruin Rogue One for you just there. So anyway, yeah. So they weren't big Star Wars fans, but they got the reference. And then Jeff, his character was like a druid, so he like said, "Well, I'll summon these geese," and I had little like geese that I'd bought this whole collection of figurines for like $6 at Goodwill, and there were like animals in there, like zoo animals. So there were a bunch of geese, and he said, "I'll ask the geese if they can fly over to the flames and find out what's going on." So I thought that was really clever. So that was the first thing. I said, okay, make an animal handling check. Okay, so if you're an experienced player, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not an experienced player, you could have this one mechanic and play a whole game. I've done it. One of the other reasons that I told them I was qualified to teach them was that I teach 7th graders, and I've even taught 5th graders how to play Dungeons and Dragons as like an after-school program at a university nearby and at a charter school near my house. So, and they pay me money to do that. Can you believe that? What a way to make a living. So, when I'm teaching them, especially at first, the addition might not be there. Like they might not be so great at math, or it might take away from like the time that we have to play, because sometimes we only have an hour. By the way, this session with this group lasted 3 hours. It was a long session. So so I said, make an ability check. I said, this is called an ability check. So look on your sheet, look for the skill animal handling, roll a 20-sided die, and add or subtract whatever your animal handling skill modifier is. So it's +2, you roll 15, you got a 17, right? If it's -2, you roll a 15, you got a 13. If it's a 0 and you roll 15, you got a 15. So I had him do that. And I said, what you also need to know is the DM at the same time is trying to determine how difficult whatever action that you ask to make is. So what number do you have to beat or tie and beat? And so I'm saying, okay, well, you're a druid. You ask these geese, to do that. I said, we'll just say it's a 10. So obviously he rolled better than that, so he's able to ask the geese to go. Now, there's other ways to handle that, right? I could have said, well, you have to cast Speak with Animals or something like that. But, these are beginner players who are just starting out, so I didn't want to, overwhelm them with spells as the very first thing, although we did get to that later, which is actually kind of cool. So Margie's character, she's the fifth of the ones that I've introduced you to. She is a warlock, right? And she had poison spray as a cantrip, I believe, or maybe a first level spell. But anyway, at some point, I told them that there were some villagers that ran up to a man, a woman, and their baby, and they're running along, and there are these 2 kobolds and a giant rat that are following them. In the module, it's an ambush drake, but I had these little figurines, and I had a giant rat, and immediately somebody said rat, so I said, okay, we'll go with that. At one point, she's going to cast poison spray, right? So she has to get within 10 feet. So I talk about movement. I told them about movement. And if you're new to the game, there's an assigned speed for each character. So smaller characters might be 25 feet per turn, 30 feet per turn for normal characters, sometimes 35 if you're like a certain kind of elf, I think. You might be faster. But anyway, that can translate. If you're using a board, it's like 5 feet per square, so 7 moves if you're 35, 6 moves if you're 30, 5 moves if you're 25. So at any rate, she casts she moves, then she casts her spell. And I explained, you can move, take an action, then move, or move partially, take an action, and move the rest of your movement. And I think that's important. I think players forget that. They can split their movement, especially at the beginning. But anyway, she cast poison spray, and I said, tell me what it looks like. And she said, well, this mist, this cloud, appears in the palm of my hands, and it drifts, kind of like in the cartoons, how an aroma drifts into the nose of I said, yeah, they have very large snouts, kind of noses. She said, you're right into the nose of the kobolds. I said, okay, what color is the spray? And she said, oh yeah, the mist, it's red. I said, oh, I was thinking green. Okay, it's red. And she's like, yeah. And then she describes the effect. I said, I don't even know if I prompted that. So I just said, oh, what happens? And she's describes the physical effect it has on this creature in some detail, slightly gruesome detail. And so she's sitting on this side of me, and her husband's sitting on this side of me. And I look over at Jared, and I said, did you know this about your wife? And he kind of leaned over and he said, yeah, I might need to find a ride home. And I said, this is what happens. Sometimes you can find out about people when you play the game based on how they play their characters. And what I find is interesting, and I told them, is that on a kind of a little bit of a deep psychological level, playing D&D can be very cathartic because you can do things, your character, you can do things through your character, have your character do things that you cannot do in real life, like yell at your boss, or kill a kobold, or fight a dragon, or leap, onto the back of a charging horse and ride off and rescue the fairy princess. You can do all these things. And if I don't want to get too crazy about this, but on some level, your brain doesn't know the difference. Okay? I mean, yes, we know the difference between fantasy and reality. But on some level, you're doing this in your mind, right? So I had a friend that I used to play with, and he said at one time, I really like when you are the DM because the way you describe things, I can see it. He's like, I can see it in my mind, like I'm watching a movie. And I said, John, that's your imagination. I'm only giving you like the bare outlines, the skeleton, right? And you're filling in the details. And that's the magic of it, right? And it's interactive writing of this story. And I told the players at the table that I was teaching, and I showed them in the book, the Hoard of the Dragon Queen, there are these little blocks of text that are pre-written for the DM in case you don't want to make up stuff. And it'll say like, the sun is setting in the west. In the east, flames leap from building to building. Terror in the streets screams, and you can get dramatic with that. And it's there for you. Or you can make up your own too, right? So I can tell you the rest of the game if you want. I guess I'll do it real quick because we're already at like 25 minutes and this video's getting pretty long. But so they dispatch the kobolds and the giant rat, and then they're trying to figure out. They go to the keep. There's a keep tower, and they go inside, and they're trying to figure out whether they're going to put the fires out or they're taking orders from Governor Nighthill saying, "Give me a prisoner." And then I realized they're running short on time, so I just throw the climactic battle in there, and I have a dragon like fly overhead. It's a blue dragon. It's shooting lightning. It decimates the archers on the battlements. And they're looking, and I show them the stat block. Okay, so I told them like, okay, I explained combat to them. I'll probably do that in a separate video at this point, but I explained like, okay, you got to take your bonus, your plus to hit with whatever weapon you're using. Roll your die, add that bonus, and then that has to meet or beat the armor class of what you're fighting. So for a kobold, it was armor class 12. For the dragon, it was armor class 19. And I showed him that in the monster manual. I showed him what an adult blue dragon's stat block looked like and how many hit points it had. And they were comparing that to their character. And they started to realize, like, this is a tough enemy. It's going to be hard to hit. It's got a lot of hit points. We're going to have to get creative about this, right? So in the scenario, you're not supposed to kill the dragon. Like, it's just supposed to be like virtually impossible, especially when you're playing Hoard of the Dragon Queen. Most of these characters are they're supposed to be first level characters, so they're not supposed to want to go anywhere near this thing. Plus, it has a frightening presence, legendary action. And so two of the players at this table, they did like succumb to being frightened. But I told them they could still take action. They can't move toward the object of their fear, the focus of their fear. So they can't move toward the dragon. So anyway, they were having trouble figuring out what to do. And so I told them there were 4 ballistas up on the battlements. So I gave them a bonus of 10 to hit with the ballista. They hit the dragons. I gave them like, some damage that was like disproportionate to what their personal weapons would have been, like a javelin or a short sword. And they, were talking about where they shot it. I said, where do you shoot it? And the one says, I shot it in the leg because I don't want it to be able to land, and I want it to have to circle, and it'll get tired. I thought that was pretty clever. Most people would shoot it in the wing. At least that's, I've had kids. The kids love shooting the dragon in the wing. And then somebody always wants to jump on top of it. And so they were going to jump on top of it. So they tied rope to the bolts and the ballista so they could anchor it to the walls. And all 4 ballistas hit, so it was anchored to the walls and it was fluttering there. And one of them shot it in the neck, and then another one tried to shoot it in the neck, same spot. So I had that happen, and they were describing the gore and everything, and it collapses and falls down on the side of the tower unconscious. And then Carla, who kind of hosted the event, who got the event rolling for her husband, said, I have a short sword, I have a sword, a long sword, I want to use this. And so I said, okay, tell me what you're doing, and how do you kill this dragon with the long sword? And so I think they had a good time, But yeah, so I got to teach them the mechanics of combat. I got to teach them how to do social interactions. I got to do, persuasion checks, insight checks. They didn't believe the one guy was telling them the truth, and so they had to figure out whether or not he was lying. So I said, give me an insight check. So ability checks. I actually we did do the poison spray spell thing, but not the spell attack. We did the spell DC, which is where the monster has to roll like a wisdom saving throw or a dexterity saving throw against a spell attack, right? Or against a spell. So I think we were able to cover a lot in the 3 hours that we played. And I really think they had a good time. And I told them to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and they would be able to get in touch with me if they had any questions. And I hope they watch this too. I know I did like an abbreviated version, but maybe I'll go into more detail about some of the things they did in future videos, especially if you like this format, because we could call this like a kind of a fireside chat with Pittsburgh Pat about D&D. That's kind of too long a title for that YouTube, but yeah, if this is the sort of thing you want to hear more of, let me know, because I'm doing this pretty much to document it for myself and a few other people that I know really will enjoy it. But if this gets popular, I can do this all day. In fact, there was Spelljammer Adventure League scenario that my friend Julia did that I really want to talk about next. And then my other friend Mike ran one, which was in Avernus. And I had never been to hell before, so that was really kind of cool, especially playing like an astral elf from like the astral plane and coming down to the nether regions of that was pretty cool. All right, so yeah, let me know what you want to hear next, and give me some good critique about this. You can tell me like, was my mic too ASMR or not ASMR enough? And do you want me to be whispering in your ear, or tell me if I should go into the mechanics more, or tell more about the story, or about the players' reactions and their ideas, because that's what fascinates me. What fascinates me is I can run the same scenario time and time again, and people react differently all the time. And I just think that's fascinating. So, all right, I hope you guys have a great night. I'm going to go to bed. So take care, and I hope to see you on the next one. Like, subscribe. Happy adventuring, fellow travelers.